There is a strange paradox in the journey of spiritual awakening. The closer you move toward the light, the lonelier you feel. When you begin to recognize your true nature beyond form, beyond the games of the ego, you might think it would make you love more easily, connect more deeply. But what happens is the opposite. You see more clearly, yet feel more distant. You hear the voice of your soul, yet sense the vast space between yourself and the world. You feel connected to the universe, yet no longer know how to connect with a single human being. In the stillness of the night, when all sounds fade away, a deep truth emerges. You can touch infinity, but you cannot hold a hand. People say awakening brings peace, and yes, it does. But that peace isn't as sweet as we imagine. It isn't the peace of companionship, but the silence of one who has seen too much. You look around and realize that what most of humanity calls love is often just two frightened souls trying to fill each other's emptiness. The promises, the vows, the gestures that seem noble all are subtle negotiations between two fears. Stay with me so I don't have to face myself. But once you've stepped through the doorway of awareness, you can never play that game again. You can't pretend not to see the strings of control or ignore the echoing void behind the words, I love you. You've seen the stage, the actors, and understood that what people often call love is merely a temporary exchange between souls that haven't yet met themselves. And then you ask, if I have understood, if I have felt, if I have touched the divine, why can't I find love? The answer lies in the deepest part of your pain, because you haven't yet broken completely. Not the kind of pain that makes you cry for a few nights, but the kind that shatters the last illusion within you. The illusion that someone out there can save you, that another person can make you whole. Only when you walk through that fire, when every layer of defense has been burned away, when you no longer need anyone to prove your worth but are left with absolute silence, only then does another door open. Not to the love of two fearful souls clinging to each other, but to the love born between two souls who have been broken, who have suffered, who have looked into their own darkness, and therefore no longer seek to possess, only to give. Awakening without suffering is a shallow enlightenment. Pain is the fire that turns knowledge into wisdom, belief into experience, and I know how to love into I am love. Only when you let pain melt you do you become soft enough to truly love. And only when you stop looking for someone to fill you, and instead learn to sit in the emptiness within, will true love begin to find you gently but unmistakably. Before a soul truly experiences pain, love is still just a beautiful dream born from fear. Most of us enter love not because we understand ourselves, but because we cannot bear to be with ourselves. We look for another person to soothe our emptiness, to feel meaningful, to hide the fragile parts we dare not face. And so, what appears to be a fated encounter is often just two egos negotiating. I will make you feel valuable as long as you make me feel less alone. In that unconscious contract, each person uses the other as a temporary remedy, as a mirror to forget the fear of their own invisibility. Because we have never truly suffered, we mistake love for medicine. We believe that if we find our other half, we will finally be complete. We are taught to search for the one, to be chosen, to be loved, to be validated. But at its core, that is a journey driven by the fear of abandonment, of being forgotten, of not being enough. And because of that fear, we lose the capacity to love truly. For love cannot be born from lack. It can only blossom from wholeness. Yet when we have never faced ourselves, never touched the emptiness within, we can only love as those trying to survive. What we call passion in that stage is not love. It is emotional addiction. It is the thrill of being seen for our best parts, the comfort of believing someone can take our pain away. But such emotion is always conditional, always expectant, and therefore always fragile. The moment the other fails to fulfill the imagined role, everything collapses. We do not love that person we love, the feeling they give us. That kind of love is like two people standing before each other's mirrors, both enamored and terrified. Every embrace is a silent plea for rescue. Every sweet word is a desperate attempt to assert, I matter. But when the illusions fade, when the paint of emotion wears off, we see the truth. We have never truly loved anyone. We were merely using love to run away from the loneliness we never learned to accept. That is why, before one tastes real pain, love is only a warm but deceptive dream. It makes us believe we've found happiness, when in truth, we've only momentarily forgotten that we've never known ourselves. And it isn't until fate shatters, that dream when the one we love leaves, when the heart breaks, when there's nothing left to hold on to, that the soul begins its real journey. The journey of learning to love, not to be saved, but to be real. Then one day, when everything you believed in falls apart, the true journey begins. No more promises, no more soothing gazes, no more the comforting feeling of being needed. Only you and the terrifying silence that feels as though it could swallow you whole. That is the moment the soul enters its dark night, a stage no one wishes for, yet no one can escape. In that place there are no applauses, no consolations, no hiding places. Everything you once used to define your self-love, the other person, the belief that you were good enough, dissolves like smoke. And you begin to see that this is not punishment. It is initiation. At first, you struggle. You believe you've lost everything. You try to reach out, to hold on, to recreate the familiar feeling of being loved. But the more you try, the emptier you feel. There is no response, no warmth, only silence. A silence so deep it forces you to hear your own soul. For the first time, you cannot blame anyone, cannot curse fate. You are left only with yourself and the questions you've avoided all your life. Who am I when no one is beside me? Why do I exist if no one needs me? Was the love I gave ever real, or just fear dressed up as romance? The dark night of the soul doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to strip away the illusions you've worn like a second skin. When you hurt so much, you no longer wish to control anything. When your tears have dried but the salt still lingers inside, that's when your soul is being cleansed. You begin to see the difference between true suffering and self-pity. True suffering doesn't make you run, it makes you still. It forces you to look at the parts you've denied. The selfishness, the dependency, the need for attention, the fear of being forgotten. All your inner shadows rise to the surface. There is no one left to mirror, no one left to blame. You are compelled to face your own shadow, the part you've long hidden behind the mask of being good. And when you look long enough, something strange happens. You begin to see truth within the darkness. You realize you have never truly loved because you never understood what love meant. You gave, but not out of freedom. You sacrificed, but not out of compassion. You endured, but not out of forgiveness, rather, out of fear of losing them, of facing emptiness if you were no longer needed. When you see that, your heart breaks. But it's a sacred breaking. It is no longer tragedy. It is the necessary fracture through which light enters. In this stage, many think they are losing everything. In truth, you are being purified. The false pieces are being peeled away. The roads are falling off. The unreal connections are dissolving on their own. Pain is the fire of transformation, burning away everything that doesn't belong to your essence. And as you stop resisting, stop trying to understand or control, you begin to feel a new energy emerging, silent yet powerful, rising from within. This is the phase of absolute solitude. You can stand in a crowd and still feel distant. You can speak with others, yet no one truly understands what you're going through. Because the dark night of the soul is a dialogue only between you and yourself. Every piece of advice becomes meaningless because no one can save you from you. Spiritual death is always a solitary journey. And within that solitude, you start to hear what you've never heard before, the breath of your soul, the primal heartbeat of existence. You realize that beneath all the wounds, there is something indestructible, quiet, and real. The deeper you go into the pain, the more you understand that this is not punishment, but purification. Those who have walked through it often describe it as a collapse by design, a deliberate dismantling of everything old so that the new may emerge. You no longer hurt because you've lost someone. You hurt because you see how long you've lived in illusion. You ache not from abandonment, but from the realization that you used love as a mask to avoid your fear. And yet, along with the pain, gratitude begins to grow. Because without this collapse, you would have remained asleep in the dream of the ego. When pain reaches its end, something extraordinary happens. You no longer wish to be loved. Not because you've stopped believing in love, but because you've discovered that true love never left you. It was never out there, never in someone's eyes. It has always been within your capacity to be present with yourself. For the first time, you feel safe in silence, with no need for witnesses. For the first time, you don't have to be good enough to deserve love. For the first time, you understand. Love is not something you seek. It is something you return to. Awakening without going through this stage is merely a form of spiritual tourism. You may read books, meditate, talk about energy and light, but if you have never died within, you have not truly lived. For no one can step into the light without first passing through their own darkness. Pain is not your enemy, it is your guide. It only turns cruel when you try to escape it, when you cling to what has already expired. But when you let go, you discover that it has a strange gentleness. In that dark night, you begin to relearn how to love not others but truth itself. You no longer seek intensity, you seek authenticity. You no longer crave vows, you crave presence. You no longer wish to hold, you wish to understand. Love slowly becomes purified of its romantic illusion and returns to its original essence, unity through awareness. When you are truly present with yourself, everything becomes love, the light, the tears, the silence, even the pain. From that moment, you begin to feel a miraculous stillness in your heart. It is not euphoric joy, but unconditional peace. You no longer feel lonely, even when alone. You no longer fear losing anyone, because you know nothing is ever truly lost. Love no longer needs proof through another's presence. It is proven through your capacity to remain open, even when there is no one left to hold. The dark night of the soul can last for months, even years. Sometimes you think you've escaped it, only to fall back into shadow. But each time you return, you are not the same. Less afraid, less needy, less pretending. Every spiral through the darkness is a shedding of skin. And then one day, you no longer see pain as a burden, you begin to thank it. Because through it, you have learned to see. When you have passed through the dark night, everything changes. The world is no longer a place to seek happiness, but a place to share awareness. Love is no longer a game between two people, but a current that flows through all things. You no longer love to be loved, you love because that is your natural state. And then you finally understand why you could never find love before. Because love was never something to find, it was something to become. The dark night of the soul is not the end of love. It is the final purification that allows true love to enter. Only those who have lost everything are empty enough to receive what is real. And only those who have suffered until they dissolve completely understand that the greatest loneliness is living without knowing who you are. When you have crossed that darkness, you no longer seek to be saved, to find your other half, or to be seen because you have seen yourself. And that is the beginning of true love, the kind that needs no proof, no return, and never fades. After the soul has endured its long, dark night, when everything familiar has dissolved, you enter a quieter, subtler phase where pain is no longer a storm, but a small, steady flame burning in your heart. There are no more cries, no more resistance, only pure observation. And that is when true transformation begins. You realize that suffering was never your enemy, it was the catalyst. It is the alchemical furnace of the soul, where the base metals of ego, ambition, fear, expectation, self-pity are burned away to reveal the pure gold of awareness. In ancient philosophy, alchemists were never simply trying to turn lead into physical gold. They were speaking in metaphor about the process of turning pain into wisdom, loss into light. And now, you are living inside that laboratory of life where the only experiment is your own heart. Pain no longer breaks you, it awakens you. You begin to see every emotional reaction as a wave of energy. When someone rejects you, you no longer spiral into "I'm not enough." When loneliness arrives, you no longer escape into distractions. Instead, you pause. You allow pain to move through your body like an electric current without judgment, without resistance. And you witness something miraculous. When you stop fighting, pain loses its power. It dissolves, transforming into a clear space, an inner stillness where your mind can breathe. It is within that stillness that the true meaning of love begins to reveal itself. You realize that love was never a relationship, it is a state of presence. When you love someone, what you truly love is not them, but the part of yourself that awakens in their presence. They were merely a mirror reflecting the love that was already within you. But because you didn't know this, you clung to the mirror, believing that without it, the light would vanish. Now that the mirror has shattered, you finally see the light was never dependent on it. The light is you. Transformation happens when you begin to see every experience, even pain, as part of the awakening process. The one who hurt you is no longer the betrayer, but the awakener. They appear to touch the exact wound you had buried, to activate what was unhealed. They made you angry, jealous, desperate, not to punish you, but to show you the parts you didn't yet know how to love. Every emotional reaction becomes a lesson. Every failure, a doorway into awareness. And you understand every pain has a purpose. When you are still in darkness, pain feels like collapse. But when the light begins to dawn, pain becomes the language of the soul. It teaches you how to listen, how to discern between true love and attachment. It helps you see that to love is not to want someone to make you happy, but to want them to be free, even if that freedom does not include you. That is a lesson only those who have truly suffered can understand. In this stage, you also begin to notice the rebirth mechanism of the ego. Even when you think you've let go, the ego returns more subtle, more spiritual. It whispers, I am awakened, I need no one. Yet that is still another form of ego, the spiritual ego. It takes pride in having transcended, in being beyond others. But if you are perceptive, you'll see, it's the same old game, just in a new language. And so pain appears again, not violently this time, but quietly to remind you that the true journey has no destination. Every time you think you know, life gives you another test to show you that knowing matters less than being. During this process, you learn something new. Love and pain are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin. Only when the heart is vast enough to hold pain can it also hold love. Those who have never truly suffered can only love on the surface. But those who have been utterly broken love through presence, not expectation. They know that whatever comes may also go, but true love is never bound by outcome. It simply wants to live, to express itself. And that is precisely when love begins to take a new shape. It is no longer an explosive passion, but a steady, glowing flame. No longer promises, but presence. No longer, I need you to be happy, but I want to share my peace with you. It's no longer, we belong to each other, but we both belong to life. This shift confuses many, because they don't recognize that they're in love. There's no racing heartbeat, no intoxication like before, only stillness and depth. Yet it is exactly this stillness that is true love. It needs no performance, no affirmation. It simply is like sunlight that shines everywhere without needing anyone to praise its beauty. When the soul reaches this stage, you develop a new relationship with pain itself. Instead of fearing it, you respect it. When something hurts you, you no longer react with anger or flight, but with curiosity. What is this wound trying to teach me? That question is a kind of magic. Each time you ask it, pain becomes a teacher, and the darkness begins to release light. You also begin to grasp a deeper truth. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is seeing. When you truly see the whole story, see the other's fear, see your own frailty, see that both of you were unconscious beings searching for love, you no longer need to blame. You don't excuse the wrongdoing, but you understand its roots, and that very understanding frees you from the cycle of suffering. Forgiveness does not arise from the mind, but from the awareness that there is no one to forgive, because everything is a lesson of the same soul wearing different faces. As transformation deepens, you realize that nothing is truly bad on this path. What you once called betrayal, loss, separation, all are forms the universe uses to bring you back to your center. You begin to perceive order within chaos, the invisible hand guiding each step. Everything that once broke you now becomes building material for a new version of you. With every dissolution, you feel lighter, truer, freer. From there, you stop seeking love as a destination. You begin to live as love. You no longer say, I want to be loved, but I want to be loved in every circumstance. When someone hurts you, you do not answer with hatred, but with the awareness that they are unconsciously reenacting their own pain. When you see others happy, you are sincerely glad, because comparison has fallen away. When you love, you no longer wish to possess, you wish to see the other be themselves. And when they leave, you do not collapse, for you know that love is never loss. This is the stage Jung calls individuation, the return to a unified essence. You are no longer split between light and shadow, between being loved and being abandoned. You become the witness of both, and from that place you find true freedom. Love ceases to be a feeling and becomes a state of expanded awareness. It doesn't reach outward. It radiates from within, like a lamp that seeks no one to shine upon it, simply shines. And then, one day, you look back on your journey, the losses, the fractures, the long nights that seem to have no exit, and you understand that everything had a reason. No pain was meaningless. Without them, you would never have learned to stand alone. Without betrayal, you would never have learned to be honest with your own feelings. Without loneliness, you would never have learned to find God in the stillness of your heart. True transformation is not the disappearance of pain, but the transformation of your relationship to it. Now, pain is no longer a wound, but a door. Whenever life hurts you, you no longer ask, why is this happening to me? But where is this inviting me to awaken? And each time, a deeper part of you is stirred. At this point, you no longer need to search for love, because you become it. Every glance, every act, every breath carries the energy of love. Others may not understand you, but they feel peaceful around you. You don't need to talk about spirituality, because your presence already testifies to it. You don't need to prove you are good or higher, because you see clearly there is no one to be higher than everyone is walking the same road, just on different stretches. This is when you are truly reborn, not as someone else, but as who you have always been, now uncovered from fear and illusion. You live simply, lightly, and everything becomes sacred. A passing breeze is enough to fill you with gratitude. A stranger's smile is enough to move you, because you understand love never needed to be found, it only needed to be seen. And precisely when you no longer need love, true love arrives. Not as salvation, but as a meeting between two souls who know who they are. Not to complete each other, but to mirror each other's light. Not to keep, but to be free together. And if one day they part, you smile, because you know that no one ever truly loses anyone. We only borrow one another for a while to illuminate what we have yet to see. Then you fully understand the lesson of pain. It did not come to destroy you, but to return you to your true essence. With no craving and no lack, you become the lover you once sought. And that is the end point of pain, when you realize you never lacked anything at all. You simply lacked the courage to see it within yourself. When the soul has passed through fire, has tasted loss, and has learned to stand in silence without collapsing, something strange begins to happen. You no longer crave love in the old way, not because your heart has hardened, but because it has been refined. What once intoxicated you, certain glances, promises, the feeling of being chosen, no longer stirs you as before. You no longer seek stimulation, you seek truth. And that truth sometimes has no shape, no name, no promise, only pure presence. You realize that before, your love was always directed outward. You sought someone to mirror your feelings, someone to validate your worth, a relationship to give your life meaning. But after dying into pain and being reborn, you no longer want to search. You have found the only place worth returning to within yourself. Everything reverses. Instead of asking, "Who can love me?" you ask, "Whom can I love from this state of freedom?" Instead of fearing abandonment, you learn to be still and watch departures as a natural part of the flow. You stop making another's presence a condition for your sense of wholeness. And as you stop seeking, love begins to find you. But it doesn't arrive like the old storm, it comes like a breeze, gentle yet real. It doesn't overwhelm you, doesn't send your heart racing, doesn't drag you back into the ego's games. It arrives with quiet, with eyes that know how to see deeply, with silences that don't need to be filled. And you realize that true love does not come to make you happy, it comes to make you true. True love does not awaken your sense of lack, it awakens your awareness. It does not promise forever, because it understands that eternity is not in time, but in consciousness. It does not keep you up at night with fear, it settles you with peace. It does not come so that you can have someone, but so that you can recognize you never lacked anything. When you meet someone at this energetic level, everything is different. You no longer feel the need to impress because you no longer wish to be anyone but yourself. You don't speak calculated words or perform being cute or strong because you know true love needs no props. You allow yourself to be real, even your scars, your awkwardness, your fears, your tenderness. And the strange thing is, the other does not run. They recognize in you what they too are seeking: truth, raw and deeply human. This is a kind of love not everyone can enter. It requires two souls who have shattered, who have been broken open, who have looked straight into their own darkness without turning away. Only those who have faced their personal hell can stand in another's light without fear. Such people love without trying to control, because they understand love cannot be owned. They do not try to prove nor demand to be fully understood, because they know every effort to understand is only fear in disguise. They do not fear losing one another, because they know loss is an illusion. When two souls have truly met, no parting can truly divide them. At this stage, love becomes a parallel journey, not a fusion. The two do not merge into one to lose themselves. They stand beside each other like two pillars of light, each illuminating the parts of the other's shadow not yet seen. They have no need to bind with vows, for they are connected through awareness. They do not love to find safety, but to evolve together. They understand that a relationship is a sacred space where two souls meet to grow, not a place where one leans on the other to avoid growth. But to sustain this kind of love, you must live in a state of profound awareness. Whenever the ego returns, love will be tested. When fear arises, you must be brave enough not to react, humble enough to apologize, and honest enough to speak your truth. This is no longer a relationship of poetic words, but a daily spiritual practice. Because true love does not come to entertain, it comes to transform. It is not a reward, but the highest initiation of a mature soul. Many people at this stage believe they have attained true love, but in reality there is no destination. Love at this depth is a current. It continually invites you to shed more of the old, to surrender more control, to love with greater freedom. And sometimes that means letting go of the one you love. Not because the feeling is gone, but because you realize that holding on would betray the essence of love's freedom. They may choose a different path. You may no longer walk side by side. Yet instead of suffering as before, you smile. Because you know love never leaves, it only changes form, shifting from outer attachment to inner understanding. You still feel them in every breath, in every moment of gratitude, but now the love no longer demands a return. It simply is. That is when you touch the purest form of love, unconditional love. You love not because the other deserves it, but because love is your natural state. You love not to receive, but because without loving, you would no longer be yourself. You love not to escape loneliness, but because you have reconciled with it, and from that peace, you can share your wholeness with others. This is a kind of love that cannot be created, nor can it be broken. It is born not from need, but from awareness. It begins not with a promise, but with the genuine presence of two souls. When two beings meet at this frequency, they no longer try to be each other's other half. They recognize they have always been part of the same whole. That encounter is not loud or dramatic, but so deep that even time falls silent. You may not see them every day, you may not stay together forever, but you know the connection transcends all boundaries. It does not depend on physical closeness or language. It exists in the resonance of the soul. You feel the other not because they stand beside you, but because they have merged with your energy. Love after dissolution is no longer a story between two people. It becomes a state of being. You see love in raindrops, in sunlight, in a stranger's smile, in the pain of those still asleep. You love without selection. You no longer divide the world into those I love and those I don't, because you understand that all are different expressions of the same energy. When you have loved deeply enough, you no longer need an object to love. Your very existence becomes the act of loving. This doesn't make you detached. On the contrary, it makes you profoundly human. You feel others' pain as your own, yet you no longer seek to rescue them because you know that saving someone from their path is robbing them of their awakening. You stay beside them, without judgment, without trying to change them, simply present, like a mirror. And in doing so, you love more deeply than anyone has ever loved you. Many believe this is the end of the journey, but in truth, it is the beginning of conscious love. For the first time in your life, you love without fear of being abandoned, misunderstood, or unloved. You love as the sun shines, without direction, without demand, without worrying about extinguishing. And in that moment, you realize love is no longer something that happens to you, it is what you are. From this point on, all your relationships change. Family, friends, work, everything becomes transparent. You no longer try to make others understand you, because you understand that truth doesn't need to be understood to be real. You no longer need to prove you're right, because you see that right is just the ego's point of view. You no longer chase intense emotions, because you've learned the quiet value of stillness. And in that stillness, you discover that love is not found in grand moments, but in the smallest gestures, a glance, a breath, a kind act. This is the highest form of love, mature love. It no longer emphasizes harmony, but truth. It no longer seeks forever, but cherishes each moment. It no longer demands, but gives thanks. It no longer fears, but releases. It no longer says, love me, but says, be yourself. And the miracle is this: when you live that way, love never leaves you again. Because true love does not need to be kept, it only needs to be understood. Once you understand its nature, that it depends on neither time, nor people, nor circumstance, you can never lose it. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning of love comes after suffering. Only when all illusions are burned away, only when the ego has stopped screaming, only when you have dissolved completely, does the soul become clear enough to contain true love. Love never disappeared. It was merely waiting for you to become empty enough, quiet enough, and real enough to realize it had been there all along from the beginning, waiting for you to become it.